All right, people. I want to talk about something in regards to Bank of America last 2 months ago. It has been said that reputation is the opinion people have of you, and character is who you are. I really feel like this needs to get out to a lot of people because if it's happened to me, then it's definitely happened to other people. And I'm not okay with that, especially for Bank of America, supposedly since 1958, was the first bank to do a credit card for several, for basically to get that established. They're the number two bank in the United States. So let's get to the facts first. July 17th, my ATM card had stopped working, my debit card. I've been with Bank of America since April of 2009, 16 years. Never overdrafted. They've made a lot of money off me for international withdrawals. I've lived outside the United States since 2009, and so I've been with them for 16 years. My debit card stopped working, which has happened several times, and this last time is the incident now that needs to be that America and others need to know about this because um, I just want to stick with the facts first. I called, told them, can they send me a new card because I can't pull money out. I mean, I could kind of scan, but I can't really pull any money out. Can they get me a new card? Please don't shut down my new card. I was on the phone with a guy named Daniel and Lorena, both Hispanic. Daniel, no fault of his, he stayed on the phone with me for 52 of the 78 minutes because I keep a recorder app for all my telephone calls, especially international, because it's for a reason. It was the first time that he had ever processed sending a card to someone international. So that definitely took some time. Basically, he had to, go over the details. I had to go over the details. Things did get a little bit hasty on my part. Being on the phone for 52 minutes and kind of have to keep repeating yourself and also being interrupted by a Bank of America agent or teller online could be very tough. And so I had to spell out the address of where I was, which I did. I had to do it a couple times. He had to repeat it, which I totally understand. But Bank of America has a certain way of doing things. And what I mean by a certain way of doing things is with Bank of America, I guess they kind of train someone to ask questions even though you tell them that you don't have this information. So with Bank of America, you need to, they're going to ask you a driver's license. They're going to ask you, telephone numbers and stuff like that. Skype had originally shut down their service, as many of you know, since May of 2026. So when they shut down their service, I've been using Skype for almost as long as I've been with Bank of America. And so being that I don't live in the United States, I don't have a United States telephone number. Well, Bank of America has their system set up, which they should, because they are naturally an American bank, to have a U.S. telephone number to authenticate and authorize for them to do stuff with your account that you tell them and look up information, etc. Well, I happen to not have a United States telephone number, so that is going to be a very tricky process in authenticating your account. So with all that being said, they're asking all these questions. They're asking questions that basically I can't give them in information. And so it was like the second or third time that he had asked me for a U.S. telephone number because what they wanted to do was set up a digital wallet. So when setting up a digital wallet, you need a United States telephone number. So that's pretty much impossible to do. And so they had to authenticate me on different ways. Like I had to give examples of me telling like all my recent transactions, how long my bank account has been open, where I opened it, different things, so he knows who he's talking to on top of driver's license number, which is fine. But now I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we're going to just stick with that. So as things continue to, move forward, I personally had said to him, Daniel, and I was like, dude, you keep asking me for something that I can't give you. And the guy was at first was really nice. He was trying to, just try to give me a digital wallet until my new card was being, sent, which I believe was $15. So I'm being charged for this new debit card. And so now I told him, I says, there's no way I can give you a United States telephone number. I can give you an international. Well, he's like, well, we don't do callbacks. We don't authenticate with international telephone numbers. Okay, understood. We're going to get to that later. And so I'm doing the best I can. And I told him, I says, now, for an example, if you tell me that you're Hispanic, I don't need to ask you 5 minutes later, are you Hispanic, especially if I've just told you. So I was using it as an analogy, and which I guess necessarily wouldn't have been a good analogy at the time, because he's helping me. I need him more than he needs me. But at the same time, I'm telling him, this analogy. I was like, so you keep asking for a U.S. telephone number that I don't have. So he got upset. He thought I was making fun of him being Hispanic, which I said no. I said I'm just using it as a bad analogy. So then he passes me to his supervisor, which is Lorena. Now, how do I know these names for a fact? The names were said. If you get on the phone, Bank of America, phone calls may be recorded. That doesn't just go just one way. And also too, as we get deeper into this, I talk to, quite a few people in the customer service and executive and management teams, to go along with this. So while all this is being said, he passes me to his supervisor. So when he passes me to his supervisor, I'm talking to her and I'm explaining. And so I'm going over everything that I just went over. And so while all this is going on, because I'm using minutes, I'm using call to talk 360 to, because this is not, I don't have Skype. This is like, one of my options for, service and talking through. Now, key point now, my debit card and everything that's attached is through this card. Now, I don't have a credit card, which I've been debt free since 2009. I'm not really interested in percentages, in APRs, but being have this, I'm working on getting a credit card, because as we get into this, you'll understand why. So while all this is going on, so she's gonna make me repeat everything that's going on. I said, no, that's not fair. And I was extremely frustrated with that. I says, if he took the time to pass you to me, the common courtesy is, well, then if you're his supervisor, then you go talk to him and kind of get caught up on the story. And she didn't necessarily want to do that. And so I told her, I says, mind you, I'm reminding you that this phone call is recorded. I says, that's foul. That's completely foul. And I says, someone's going to have to answer for that later. I says, for the amount of minutes that I've been on. I says, I've already been on the phone for 52 minutes and counting. And I says, now I'm going to have to get ready to go through this, re-explain everything all over again and get my new debit card. I said, no, that's not fair. So, with that being said, she got caught up, and I'm going through the whole process again. And so I took it upon myself to say, well, since I have to reiterate everything, including the address, I says, I want you to read the non-disclosure, because the new disclosure is something that's read every time you get a new debit card. Now, I've already told her, please make sure, do do not cancel my debit card, because that's the only thing I have. Do not cancel the current one that I have, but also send the new one. This card is not stolen. It is not lost. And I specifically told her, don't do this. As we continue, as she's reading this, then all of a sudden, like Google Play Store, Nike, and a few others are having issues with my debit card and payments, and they're actually saying stuff like, we haven't received your, you basically you need a new payment process because there's an error. So I'm telling the woman on the phone, Lorena, this is what's going on. I thought I told you don't shut down my card. She says, please wait for a minute, please, because she doesn't understand what's going on. Now I'm disconnected. So now from what's been said, I'm pissed. Because now my debit card is not working. And I just got disconnected. So I called back again, and I got to go through this whole process again. And I'm explaining to Bank of America, I don't even have a debit card to pay for minutes. What am I going to do? You guys just shut down my card after I specifically told you not to. So I ended up talking to another employee, after re-authenticating myself and re-going through the whole process again, the whole gauntlet of, because she's trying to authenticate me with a United States telephone number, and I don't have that. And I don't have that. So Bank of America is now showing me that they're not prepared for situations like this, but at the same time, they have no problem taking your money. They have no problem taking your withdrawals. They have no problem smiling in your face, saying thank you for being a gold member, platinum member, all this stuff that I've never signed up for. But they value me as a customer, and they keep saying this every time they get on the telephone. It's been 16 years that I've been with them. I specifically told them, do not shut down my debit card. And the supervisor overruled Daniel, which actually he was just sending out a new card and had my card damaged, and Lorena overruled and changed it. So you can imagine how upset and pissed I was. I was irate. So I'm on the phone with another employee, and they're finding out everything I'm saying is true. Now, keep in mind, I've been on the telephone, so she's trying to get me over to ATM's card services. I'm supposed to get on the phone with them. I'm constantly on hold. She's looking at everything, and she's confirming everything that I'm saying is true. And she can't even understand what's going on. And so she gets me on the phone with Carlos, a manager, and I explained the whole situation to Carlos. And I was like, I'm running out of minutes. What am I going to do? You guys specifically have failed me in this whole process. I have no access to my card. You guys have no Western Union service that you guys aren't even prepared to support people internationally, but you sit there and take their money. I says, I haven't signed no new agreements, no yearly updates or something, agreement, the AUPs, the acceptable user policy, or the new agreements that can come out every year, like the same ones PayPal and other places send, to let you know, hey, we can't support you. And I said, if there is, please tell me what time and date that these new policies came out that you don't support internationally, because you have no problem, taking my money. I says, and now I'm pissed. So now with all that being said, Carlos gets in touch with ATM services, and they're like, they cannot overrule what Lorena did. So I said, so you guys have a single point of failure. And what I mean by single point of failure is you gave someone the absolute permission and the authority to basically, she just tarnished my account to where I have nothing until I get a new card. And so now I'm forced to wait for a new card because you guys won't turn on the card that I currently have that I'm holding. And now I'm suffering while she continues to work as an employee with Bank of America. And this all happened July 17th, I believe it was a Thursday. And they're like, sorry, there's nothing we can do. And I was like, why would you give someone that much power to be able to do something like that? I says, with all all the people with college degrees, high, customer experience and customer service. I said, this was negligence. I said, the reason why I say this was negligence, because if the employee had it right and she overruled, what gave her business to do that? What gave her business to do that? She did that on purpose. That's almost like an insider threat. And I says, I have an idea. Please go listen to the phone call. I have an idea of why she did that. Because, me and her kind of like got into it over the telephone on a professionalism situation, because I made her reread, the non-disclosure agreement. Since she wasted my time, I wasted hers. I said, but now how am I supposed to pay for minutes? I got how many thousands in the bank, and I have no access to it because of her. And all Bank of America can do is provide sorry. I said, no, that's unacceptable. That's completely unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable. And I said, someone's going to have to answer for that. ATM customer service never got on the phone with me. They had no way of supporting me in this situation. So I had to go to my friends and my cousin, because I'm getting ready to go to getting ready to go to another country to do some business. And now I don't even know how I'm supposed to pay for my hotel. How am I supposed to pay for, my flight and all these things? So thank God I had someone, because my bank just shut down on me. Fortune 500 company. So as far as I'm concerned, these people are just lying to people, smiling in their face. All they're interested in is just getting people's money, and they don't even know how to do customer service right. And I actually told them on the phone, you should hire me as a project. You should hire me on how to properly do customer service, because you guys aren't prepared for emergency situations. You guys aren't prepared for restore and backup plans. This should be, I says, why would you trust a supervisor? I says, you have people that are overseas, me as a veteran, who have thousands of dollars. You're trusting people with, these supervisors and these tellers are responsible for and have access to people's accounts, information, money, social security number, birth certificate, and you give them power. And then you guys don't have, as a Fortune 500 company, as powerful as you are, you guys aren't prepared to set up a restore or a backup in case somebody makes a mistake. It happens. But this wasn't a mistake. And the reason why I said this wasn't a mistake is because there's going to be probably a part 2 to this. This can't be a mistake, because you spent how many minutes on the phone with me, both of them, and you still failed to follow directions. So basically, the Bank of America is hiring people that can't comprehend and follow simple instructions, especially as a supervisor. That does not look good. That is an issue. And now I have to suffer. So when all that was done, as the process continues, I started finding out more about Bank of America as I started to ask questions. And so then I called back the next day. Once my cousin was fortunate to, give me some, let me borrow her credit card and add minutes to my account. And then I called back the very next day. And then once I called it back the very next day, I got in touch with an employee. And once I got in touch with an employee, I asked for a supervisor, and I explained my reasons why. So the supervisor started to understand what was going on. And so she was trying to get me access to a digital wallet card. Because I said, how am I supposed to pay for gas? How am I supposed to survive? I have no access to nothing, and I'm getting ready to travel tomorrow. How am I going to do this? How am I supposed to pay for it? I says, what if there's any type of fees that I have to pay while in the airport? How am I going to do it? Now, thank God my guy was sending me, money in the morning, but that's ultimately not his responsibility. And so she tried to activate my digital wallet card. And while she was trying to do that, She kept giving me a new digital wallet card, and I couldn't activate it because you needed a U.S. telephone number. So I said, I don't have a U.S. telephone number. And so she's trying to look for different workarounds to try to activate this card. And we had ran through so many digital wallet cards that it actually froze the system. So I asked her a question. I said, so how can I activate a U.S. telephone number? I says, because now I can't get access to my account, because now she started asking me random questions to authenticate my account. Now, what this system did is it started asking me questions, random questions that had nothing to do with me. Random questions like, do I know this person because I have a certain last name? And then it started asking me this person and this person and this person. My name is Anthony Littlejohn, by the way. And so they're asking me all these random questions about Littlejohns, like, did I own this car, or did I own this property in this state? And none of that. And so then I started to realize, I said, your system is not smart. Who signed off? I asked her, who signed off in authenticating the system? Because I says, before you guys assume that this Carlos Littlejohn or Carl Littlejohn is associated, I says, how can you even verify that this is, how do you even know? You don't even, I said, this may not be my may not be my family tree. It may be other Littlejohns. And I says, you guys would need to do a family tree in order to assume that these people are related to me. So the account was locked because of the 5 questions that had nothing to do with me. And so now I can't authenticate to my own account. And so what actually happened is that now the car that I was supposed to have coming, it stopped that car too, which wasn't even 24 hours. So now I have to wait another 7 to 10 business days. And then now we have to reissue a new card all over again for something that I didn't do, that I would have never been in this situation if Lorena would have just followed directions. And there was nothing more that she could do with me. As I spent another hour. I had spent within that day probably easily over 2 hours on the telephone. And then I'm on the way to the 3rd hour where she apologized. And then I started realizing that they aren't prepared internationally to take care of people in case of emergencies. And then what she also told me is that even for fraud purposes, even if I walked into a Bank of America, because I'm listening to this, it's recorded on both ends. I had permission. That even if I walked into a Bank of America for fraud purposes, it may take up to 60 days for a valid telephone number to be authenticated to my account. Even if I have my own driver's license, fingerprints, and come in, I still have to wait 60 days. How come none of this was let known when I signed up to be with Bank of America? Now, I'm already, looking at this from a legal perspective. I know the first thing I would have to do is let the Attorney General know, make a huge complaint. And I'm making sure that all of this goes viral, because the people need to know. Bank of America is not what they look like, and they are not what they appear. And I'm willing to believe that more than half the employees, if they kind of knew what was going on the scenes with Bank of America, maybe I'm not sure, I can't speak for them, but maybe they probably would have had a second thought about working for such a corrupt bank. And yes, I'm saying it just like that. This is going to be on YouTube. This is going to be on TikTok. This is going to be on Instagram. This is going to be on Facebook. Yeah. Me and Bank of America tried to work this out through the telephone and email, and they have already admitted that they are may possibly change policies. I have not received any type of compensation because they gave me more than 30 apologies through the telephone and we're sorry, but did nothing to fix this. And I told them that on the reverse end, if I was overdrafted, you guys wouldn't be concerned if I said sorry. So yes, I am holding you guys accountable. I says because sometimes you guys need to check who you guys are hiring. They can't follow simple instructions. Comprehension. I mean, this is middle school. This is grade school, middle school. This isn't even high school. God forbid, Lorena had a college degree or the people with experience. So I called back Sunday. I made a complaint that Friday and that Saturday, and then I landed in another country, so I'm about 13 hours ahead of the United States, and I called back. I talked to a customer service, and re-explaining my story and told them that I would like to speak to someone higher than a manager or supervisor. I believe that I deserve this, being that I would require more than a manager or supervisor, because a supervisor management team is the reason why I'm in this situation. So I said, I believe this definitely justifies having someone a little bit higher, which they refused to give me. And so I was polite with the woman, told her, I think you need to give me at least a supervisor right now. And here's why. I did have permission to record a telephone call again. And so once I was talking to the woman, I was telling her, take your time. And if you don't understand something, please let me know. Please take notes. And so I was asking her some questions. I was asking some very tough questions. And I will go over some of those questions with you. Give me a sec. Some of the questions I was asked, just I guess in a way of just confirming what I already knew, but wanted to make sure. I was asking questions and like, you guys don't have a call back or support for international telephone numbers, correct? And they said, correct. You don't email customers, correct? Correct. So you ultimately, there's no support unless if you have a USA telephone number. I need to confirm this legally. And I said, so why do you guys have international customer support? Well, why I said, why do you guys bank with people internationally or allow them to go internationally if you have no support for them? Because it sounds like this is not full customer support service. You stopped your Western Union, correct? Correct. And I said, so, and if you don't have a U.S. telephone number, you cannot activate the digital wallet card. So I'm going through so many different questions. Like, your system of verification will ask other similar last name people, though I have no affiliation with them. And so as I went through like with 23 different questions, and maybe I should go over all of them. Yes. And so I said, if none of these questions are affiliated with me, then I cannot be verified, and the system doesn't ask for email and sending authorization code, correct? Correct. I said, so why does Bank of America have a single point of failure? And I says, why does a supervisor or employee have so much power that no one can undo what someone can do in sabotage, negligence, or accident? Why do you trust someone with so much power? She couldn't answer the question. I said, so Daniel reported my car damaged, as your system shows, but Lorena changed to stolen according to fraud department customer service, along with the manager, and cannot be undone. And so as I'm going through all this information, I says, and your system, in attempts to activate digital wallet card, would ask for a telephone number on file. Apparently, if asked to send a code to other telephone numbers that aren't even associated with me, no longer in service. If those numbers can't receive a code, then it locks the count up and removes the digital wallet card, though it was never activated, correct? Because this is what happened to me. And they're like, correct. I said, also, I learned from Then I started, naming other supervisors, and then I was like asking questions. I says, "How long does this system has been intact?" The employee did not know, and so I started asking other questions. Why is no one trained to override the system? I says, in the question 13, why am I not allowed to my funds after being with Bank of America for 16 years with not one overdraft? Why is no one trained to have situations like this? Why isn't there a international team? Because you guys have international banks in Europe. And I said, why is there no one higher than a supervisor that a banking customer can get to? And so as I started going through question after question after question after question, she said, I think it's best that I get the supervisor. And I said, this is what I told you from the beginning. So once the supervisor gets me on hold, mind you, now I'm already past 53 minutes because I record my telephone calls. And I actually might want to show you in part 2 how long I've been on the telephone with Bank of America. This is who America has chosen as Bank of America, right? And how much money they make off, the fractional reserve, and what they can do with people's money, and how much they can lend when you put money in a bank. All that's going on. All they could do is provide a sorry, and a sorry does not change my situation because I'm suffering because of that supervisor. So once the supervisor finally gets on the telephone, and I says, well, I've already had permission for this telephone call to be recorded. And I said, so I started asking her some of the same questions. And then I said, now, are you aware that this phone call is being recorded? And she said, no, I'm not okay with this phone call being recorded. Have a good day. And then hung up the telephone. Then that's when the executive response team called. Executive response team now has called me. And I asked, do I have permission for this telephone call to be, recorded? And so she said, sure. I got disconnected. So then after that, I didn't hear from him again. And then we started playing phone tag. And what I mean by phone tag is I would call, because it was like 5 in the morning when I started receiving the cell phone calls. Now, mind you, I have an appointment at 8 a.m. and I'm already fresh off the airplane and I'm dealing with this. I got off the airplane a little bit, 15 minutes before 4 a.m. I get to my hotel and the phone calls are coming in 360 once I connect to Wi-Fi. Now, with all that being said, day after day after day for that week, I was calling her. I missed her telephone. I called her. I couldn't get in touch with her. She gave me an extension, but every time I called the extension, it was like, I guess through Talk 360, it might have been like a serious situation where I couldn't get in touch with her. So I was like, I asked her, do you have a direct telephone number? And this is starting to get irritating because I'm ready to deal with this. And so now I couldn't get in touch with her. And that's when Chris Cruz from the executive response team took over. Finally get in touch with Chris Cruz, and we're having, at least maybe once a week we talk, and I explain the whole situation. She goes and listens to the telephone calls, and she finds out what I said was true, and she asked me, what are we looking for compensation? I told what my compensation amount was, which I thought was fair. Obviously, because, I promised, and I also sent my justifications of why I was asking the disclosure amount in detail, which I'll tell you right now. Just give me a moment. I says, for the amount that I asked for, I said for the systemic failures in authentication, meaning that their system is not prepared to authenticate someone with or without a U.S. telephone number, due to the fact that, without a U.S. telephone number, they're asking me random questions about other little Johns that has nothing to do with me. And then also, too, it takes up to 60 days for them to authenticate a new telephone number. Also, too, for Bank of America, in the majority of the 16 years, I think at the 5th year, every couple years, I start getting withdrawal fees uh, reimbursed to me for the amount of money that they take from me. It could be sometimes anything between $15 to $20, depending on the country that I'm in. So they reimburse me. So I also included that. So you can imagine how much money that would be in ATM fees for 16 years, that they, out of a common courtesy, knew that if they didn't do anything, that I was going to go to, USAA or a different type of bank. In order to, Bank of America. But I hadn't been to Bank of America in a while in the United States because I don't live there. But that's going to change because I'm very soon taking a visit and I'm going to go to another bank. The lack of oversight in decision making. Supervisors have been granted excessive authority without appropriate avenues for escalation or review, leaving clients without meaningful recourse when decisions affect their accounts or cards. The inadequate international support prior to my engagement with you. There was no reliable international customer support, nor even timely responses to email inquiries. Restrictions on digital wallet access. Digital wallet activation is limited to clients with U.S. telephone numbers, which unjustly disadvantages international customers. Unreasonable delays in a telephone verification. Verification of a telephone number can take up to 60 days, as I mentioned. Lack of international service continuity. Clients without U.S. telephone numbers face service interruptions as calls cannot be reliably connected. In my case, I was forced to borrow a relative's credit card for 8 days simply to maintain communication while awaiting a replacement card. Risk during emergencies. While I was fortunate not to face a medical emergency, the absence of account access abroad created significant distress, imposed unnecessary risk to my well-being. Potential for business losses for the things that I was going to do that I couldn't do at that time. Emotional and mental distress. Good faith commitment for after 16 years. There is none of that. Deficiencies in staff training and escalation, and improper handling of international card issuance. And they declined. But they did say that they're likely may look into changing policies. So for them and how I wrote all this out and justify that over the telephone, that lets me know they're going to change their policies, but they don't want to compensate me. They didn't even try to give me a number of what they're willing to compensate, because Chris Cruz actually had to go to the business partners, which I would assume would be their attorneys who legally protect them. And I was never given an amount. I asked, what do you think is fair? Because I said, I really don't want to get an attorney. I don't necessarily want to call an attorney general. I really don't want to, go viral with this, but fair is fair. I mean, there's penalties if I overdraft. There should be some penalties for what they've done. They did let me know that internationally that Daniel and Lorena will be talked to. And it's none of my business if they're still employed with Bank of America. I mean, that might be their decision, and for them to decide if they really want to keep them. Maybe that they follow the code in honor of what Bank of America stands for. But the key thing is I have Bank of America's international. I have the chairman. I'm working on. I have the vice presidents. Got quite a few emails. But I'm gonna let them know every time I make a video. And they're all gonna know. I got their information. I have a way of getting people's important information, because they need to know this is what they stand for, and how they conduct their business, and how they shake people's hands, and how they go about, and false advertising. As far as I'm concerned, I have a right to say that. So this is going to be part one, and then after that, I'm going to start showing proof with the screenshots of how long I was on the phone with Bank of America, and then I'm going to do my best to let everybody I can know in the United States, because they need to know this.